everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com, back again with some more lovely, exciting wrestling news. Check out Tom's video earlier on today for all the other exciting news that happened, including the Renee Young news. Of course, she is leaving WWE. But now, let's talk about a whole new batch of lovely wrestling news. Let's look at those headlines. First of all, a certain WWE superstar was in line for a big push before lockdown hit. Next up, a former UFC champion, dare I say a UFC legend, wants a WWE run, including a spot in next year's Royal Rumble. And finally, a WWE veteran could be bound for New Japan Pro Wrestling. So first of all, yes, this news that a WWE superstar was in line for a big push before the lockdown hit. Not like they'd been picking up victories here and there on the mid-card, but not like main event victories or anything like that. But apparently, as things went on, if nothing had changed, they were in line for a big push. And it's none other than former 24/7 champion Riddick Moss. Sean Ross Sapp from Fightful has reported that Riddick Moss was sat out by Paul Heyman deliberately as a way to protect Riddick from any potential heat that would have come about if he himself had taken the decision to not attend tapings. Quite smart there from Paul Heyman, deliberately, voluntarily saying, right, Riddick, you go home, you have a bit of a rest, mate. They took the 24/7 title off him in this skit outdoors with R-Truth, and it seems like a much more clever way of, rather than having Riddick Moss say, I don't want to turn up, and then, you know, getting Sami Zayn'd, for lack of a better term. It was apparently noted that Heyman was very high on Riddick Moss at the time, and a big push was in order. It was also reported by Dave Meltzer back in May that Riddick Moss's absence from WWE TV was not a bad sign for his future, and that WWE officials hadn't given up on him at all. Now, it is worth noting that Riddick Moss is now back in WWE on TV. He came back on the August 10th edition of Raw, and since then he's been basically doing the same thing, appearing on Raw Underground and battering lads for fun, whether they're his opponent or more recently just some dude in the crowd as well, while Shane McMahon stands to the side and goes, that was sick! That was sick, mate! That was sick. So we shall see what happens to Riddick Moss in the coming weeks. Of course, there were these reports of a potential Raw Underground Championship, which would, in theory, be introduced to the show soon. And if that is the case, if that is true, and they do have a Raw Underground Championship, then you have to imagine that Riddick Moss is one of the leading contenders for that title, to become the inaugural champion. Another leading contender, however, could be Dolph Ziggler, who's been an absolute killer on Raw Underground, despite, you know, getting his ass handed to him by Drew McIntyre on the actual normal portion of Raw. So interesting stuff there. Could we potentially see Riddick Moss versus Dolph Ziggler for the inaugural Raw Underground Championship? I'm getting way ahead of myself. That is pure speculation on my part, but it'll be exciting and interesting to see where it goes, especially if you're a big fan of Mr. Moss. Next up, let's talk about former UFC light heavyweight champion and UFC legend Daniel Cormier, who's been speaking to Sports Illustrated recently, again saying that he really wants a WWE run. Cormier, of course, recently lost against Stipe Miocic in the heavyweight title match. He moved up a weight class and was unable, sadly, to get the job done and become UFC heavyweight champion, and then afterwards insinuated that he'd probably be stepping away from in octagon competition, saying that, you know, I'm only interested in title matches right now, and after this loss, I can't really see myself getting another one in the future. Very sad times for Cormier, a very beloved figure in the MMA world. He seems like a sound bloke, and also he's a massive wrestling fan. Who could forget, for example, the video of him absolutely marking out when Seth Rollins cashed in the main event of WrestleMania 31. And Cormier has specified that he would love a Royal Rumble moment, saying, I would love a Royal Rumble moment where I throw a dude into the ropes and I clothesline his ass over the top, or I drop kick somebody over the top rope. And he also said, and then I'll take my bump and get thrown out. Let me chase somebody down, clothesline him with a Bradshaw Layfield clothesline from hell, and eliminate somebody from the Royal Rumble, then throw me over the top. Pro wrestling, I'm all in. Reassuring signs there that Cormier doesn't expect to win the Royal Rumble. He just wants to go after one person, bang, elimination, and then he'll get thrown out by somebody else. He knows how the business works, does DC. And of course, Cormier has an extensive amateur wrestling background as well. In fact, I think I'm right in saying that he was an Olympic level competitor. Not quite certain on that, but I think so. And Cormier would basically have all the fundamentals down, you might imagine, such as so many pro wrestlers who've transferred over from the amateur wrestling world. Now, Cormier also really has kind of a hard path to follow if he is going to get into WWE, because UFC stars have had a bit of a mixed success rate in the pro wrestling world. Because of course you've got the likes of Ronda Rousey, who was a wild success, showed incredible natural ability, main evented WrestleMania, took part in various entertaining matches. And then you've also got Cain Velasquez, who I can confirm, having interviewed him, had a real passion to improve and do really well as a wrestler, but just never got given the right sort of chance in WWE. He was booked strangely. It didn't quite work out. He told me he was going to be in the Royal Rumble and then wasn't in the Royal Rumble. He lost to Brock Lesnar in very short order in Saudi Arabia, and it just didn't go right for him really, which was a shame. It was a tremendous shame. I am biased because I thought he was a nice bloke. But could Cormier do any better? Well, I guess that remains to be seen. I remember rumours as well that he would be involved in WWE, maybe in a commentary role, a non-wrestling role, and he'd be great at that as well, because he's a great talker. He's done commentary on UFC events, and he's just got a very natural, easy, and likeable charisma about him. Next up, a WWE veteran, dare I say legend, could be bound for New Japan Pro Wrestling. This again comes courtesy of Fightful, who spoke recently with David Finlay, who of course competes in New Japan Pro Wrestling, and learned about Fit Finlay. Finlay, he loves to fight, learned about his willingness to wrestle. The report apparently states from Fightful that the older Finlay, Fit Finlay, still trains weekly and didn't sound opposed to teaming with David in New Japan. There were some other interesting details here and there involving David Finlay, saying that he was not wrestling under a contract with New Japan until recently. He was mainly working under a handshake deal, but then when AEW launched, he was put under more pressure to sign. It makes sense. They don't want their talent jumping off to AEW, as happened in fact with Trent Beretta. Just realised there, and also Kenny Omega, the Bucks, Cody, you know, there was quite a few. But before I came in to shoot this video, I mentioned this story to Sam, who was wildly excited, saying if Finlay's wrestling in New Japan, and he made a very good point, there are so many matchups that will be fantastic, because New Japan does have basically kind of an older, kind of a section of their roster who are older, more grizzled veterans, such as Fit Finlay. People like Yuji Nagata, for example, who you could have an amazing match with. People like Minoru Suzuki. Who wouldn't want to see Finlay versus Minoru Suzuki? And you know what? Maybe Hornswoggle would get involved as well. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. Stranger things have happened in New Japan even this year. Next up, WWE have begun selling virtual SummerSlam meet and greets with Drew McIntyre, Braun Strowman, Keith Lee, Seth Rollins, and Bayley. So if you fancy a virtual meet and greet with one of those superstars, then listen up for further details. Actually, they may have sold out. I'll get back to you in a second. Tickets cost $125 and include a 2-minute private one-on-one video with the selected wrestler, a downloadable video as well of the meet and greet within 48 hours of it taking place, and the ability to purchase exclusive, personalized autographed items. Oh, here we go. Some of them have sold out. Drew's, Strowman's, Rollins's, and Bayley's have all sold out, but Keith Lee's is still available. So if you want to chat with Keith Lee, then check it out. As a little accompaniment to this news story, WWE are also testing the Thunderdome today, part of this new era of WWE. Virtual meet and greets and an exciting new time at the Amway Center in Orlando, Florida, now renamed the WWE Thunderdome. And apparently WWE have sent out invitations to members of their mailing list, offering them a chance to take part in a live WWE Thunderdome test today. For fans who've signed up for the invite, WWE will present a match to them to test what the Thunderdome is basically like, and promising them that they will be the first to take part. Unfortunately for the rest of us, for us peasants down here, not on the mailing list or not part of WWE's favourites, that sounded so bitter, the match won't be broadcast live. It appears like it'll just be an in-house test for the company, and it is scheduled for 5:15 p.m. Eastern. Obviously, images and videos have emerged of the Thunderdome being constructed recently. We'll see what it looks like pretty soon, and it'll be ready in time for SummerSlam, of course. We don't really know how it's going to look. There's drones and everything, apparently. A lot of people have said also that the Thunderdome resembles somewhat the virtual arena that is seen during the opening package of SmackDown Live on Fox. And finally, we also have some details on Impact Wrestling's Bound for Glory 2020, their signature event of the year, one of their signature events of the year. I'd probably put Bound for Glory there and Slammiversary there, and they're kind of parallel, aren't they? But Bound for Glory, I think, is often regarded as the biggie. And Impact dropped some advertising for it on their social media yesterday for Bound for Glory. Eric Young is heavily featured so soon after making his return to Impact Wrestling as a heel, it turns out. He's not yet been able to pick up the Impact Championship, but he certainly seems to have it and Eddie Edwards in his sights. In the video, Eric Young's a prisoner in a rundown jail and starts talking about how the world doesn't belong to them, it belongs to us. And then it's revealed that Bound for Glory will happen live on pay-per-view on Saturday, October 24th. Bit of a wait until then, but enough time for Impact to build some compelling storylines. And people have been enjoying Impact recently in the lockdown era. They've been putting on a surprisingly consistent show, some good matches here and there, and it just generally seems a lot more coherent a product than we're used to seeing from Impact Wrestling. I wonder if Eric Young will headline this show, because he seems to be quite a focal point since returning, and I think, he's quite a compelling character. He was very underused in WWE, especially since moving up from NXT to the main roster, and he's portrayed various different personas over his time in Impact as well. He's a real veteran of the company, from sort of a happy-go-lucky figure, an underdog champion in the mold of Daniel Bryan, and a bit of more of a sinister, insane character, similar to the one that he is indeed portraying now. So very interesting stuff there. Remember, the Bound for Glory takes place on October 24th on pay-per-view. Thanks very much for watching this news video. I've been Jack from Cultaholic.com. Leave your thoughts and opinions in that comment section down below, and stay safe out there, stay positive, and I'll see you very soon.